peeps and creeps, and welcome to Fright Club. I'm Gav, he's Danny.
Hello.
We're the Fright Club and this is a brand new episode of Monday Night Frights. On tonight's show, we're talking about the South Korean zombie horror film, Train to Busan.
팀장님 어디쯤 오고 계세요? 아, 진짜 미치겠네.
And we're back with another episode of Monday Night Frights. It's episode 4.5. We are almost halfway through season 4, Danny. What is happening?
Mental. I mean, 4.5.
Five.
We're, as you say, near halfway there for the season already. Time flies when you're having fun,
Sure does, boy.
Time flies when you're absolutely having a ball with your pal and talking about your ghoulies and your freddies and everything else. But today, your deadites. But today we're going to talk about Korean zombies.
I know, and I was going to say this is going to be a little bit of a change of pace from the previous couple of episodes because this is more of a serious movie.
Yes,
and there definitely will be no jokes or humor or talking about monster ditties or anything like that, and it ghoulies or.
No, not a single ghoulie, not a single ditty. And this film is actually it's quite emotional. Like I found myself towards it because I'd watched it. I'd say I watched it about 4 years ago. So I'd kind of forgotten some of the stuff. There's bits I remember and then stuff I kind of had forgotten about. But I forgot the kind of emotional weight to this film. And I think it's because of the whole like father-child relationship thing. There's just something about Daz that fucking gets right to my heart. So I just, wish my dad fucking would throw himself off a train for me.
Is it because you're about to become a dad?
No, God, no, not anytime soon, sir. Not anytime soon.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
That was a joke, folks. There's not going to be any Fright Club babies anytime soon.
No.
But it is. I feel that definitely the whole kind of like family thing in this and the sense of duty to community and stuff that comes through in this because the transitions you see within the characters and the character development throughout this is fantastic. But yeah, I had forgotten how I remember it being good, but I'd actually forgotten how good a lot of the story and stuff is for it. But this was as I said, I watched it about 4 years ago. A cousin of mine said, "Oh, we should watch this. It's supposed to be excellent." So I was like, "Yep, okay, cool," and fucking loved it. But this was your first time on the Train to Busan.
It was, yeah. We spoke about potentially doing this in previous seasons, and I was kind of looking forward to watching it and covering it. And I was keeping it for an episode of Monday Night Frights because I didn't want to watch it randomly and then just sort of then cover it at some point.
I think it was potentially one of the first times I've seen something before you, because normally we've either both seen it or you've seen it and I haven't. I think this movie the first time we've come into a thing and I've been the one to see it first.
I think you're right. I think maybe one other time, I don't even know what it was, but I feel like there might have been one other episode that I hadn't seen.
Potentially.
But yeah, you suggested doing this as one of our episodes, and I was holding off for it. And eventually, we got to season 4, and we're like, right, we're definitely penciling in for this season. Yep. Great film. We'll get into it. Really looking forward to chatting about it. It's actually a South Korean film from 2016, and it's our second Korean film that we've covered.
Second Korean film that we've covered.
The other one was.
Oh boy,
one of our favorites.
One of my favorite movies of all time. It's one of those ones that when people ask. Little link to our Old Boy episode. Yeah, Old Boy is one of those ones, when people go, "What's your favorite movie?" And I'm like, I can't really answer like one favorite movie, but Old Boy is like one of the ones that I normally come out with. Train to Busan's not quite up there, but it's still a fucking excellent Korean horror film. So
it was directed by Sang Ho-yeon, I think is the name of the director. I'm going to completely butcher
again names. A lot of the names that are said in this episode, please do not at us. We know we're saying them wrong. We're privileged white men. We can't say it right.
A couple of farmers from fucking Northern Ireland, like
Ballymena High.
Couple of wee broad boys.
Oh Jesus, I couldn't say that name if I tried.
Sang Young. But we'll do our best, and to be honest, we'll probably just describe characters more than say their names.
100%.
But yeah, so it was released in 2016. It debuted at Cannes, during the midnight screening section of Cannes Film Festival, and it was received very well by critics and audiences alike.
Yep.
And it's set on a high-speed train from Seoul to Busan, funny enough.
Who'd have thought?
I know, who'd have thunk it, you know? And it's about this high-end businessman, I suppose he is, and he's very busy. He's got a young child. His marriage is split up.
Yeah.
Or it's
he's out from Seoul.
He's living with his mother.
He's living with his mother, and his daughter lives with him. And it's very obvious from the start of the film. I think even before we get into that, I love how this film opens with the farmer who's just like, you're all a pain in the eye. You know, he comes to a checkpoint in the road and it's like a biohazard people. And he's like, is this fucking foot and mouth again? Like, are you going to put down all my pigs? And the wee biohazard guy's like, no, it's just a wee spill from the bio labs nearby. Nothing to worry about. Just carry on. And then he fucking hits the deer. And he's just like, ugh, and then drives off, and the deer fucking reanimates in the middle of the road and jumps up. And I think that is great because it's so uncommon that animals are affected by the infection. You know, it's not very often you get, like, I know in the most recent that Zack Snyder, fucking Army of the Dead. Was it Army of the Dead?
Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead. There was the zombie tiger. Spoilers. But this, I just thought it was really interesting that our first introduction to the fact that this film's about undead things is that it's a deer that gets hit by a car that reanimates, and then just the glossy milky eyes on the deer. I was like, whoa, okay, cool. And then we get launched into the life of our main protagonist, who, as you say, is a businessman who's very, very focused on his life, you know, his work life, and looking out for himself and being on top of everything. And even the fact that his daughter, he says to his wife when he's on the phone at the start, she's like, it's her birthday and she wants to come to Busan to see me, like, just let her go. And he's like, no, I'm going to raise our daughter, and if she's going, then I'm, you know, he's really reluctant to take her, and it isn't until he gives her a birthday present that she's actually already got the Wii. He's like, what do you really want? And she's like, I want to go to Busan. That he kind of gives in, and he's like, right, okay, I'll take you to Busan then. But you can see it's obviously in a conflict of interest with his work and stuff, because you kind of get those phone calls throughout the start where he's saying, like, I'll be back by lunchtime, we'll get it sorted, send me reports. You know, it's very much like, I've got to work. And he's never really thinking about what's going on around him until shit hits the fan.
Yeah, that's a very good sum up of what the whole kind of plot is at the beginning anyway. Love that opening scene with the deer. I think it was a very smart way to open it. Throughout the start of the opening segments of this, you kind of get teasers that something's happening.
It launches in fairly quick.
Yeah.
It doesn't take its time really. And again, I like that, you know, it's not really overly explained. They just kind of go, there's been a leak. And that's it. You know, we've seen enough zombie content to kind of know, this is a biohazard zombie movie. I think it's just really well done, and it just launches pretty much from the you know, patient zero, shall we say, on the train. As soon as she kicks off, then that's it. The whole thing ramps up.
Yeah, so he gets on the train, blah blah blah. They're going to Busan, and then just before the train takes off, you see this passenger who's injured sort of jump on, and it's a girl, and she's sort of shaking, and she's kind of
convulsing. Looks like she's having a bit of a fit. She's stumbling down the train, then collapses in like one of the wee middle parts between the cabins, and she starts to look like she's having a fit. But even before we get to that, so we sort of see glimpses of her. It cuts away, and then it cuts to like other people on the train, and we kind of get to see a lot of the main players. So we get like the two old sisters like chatting to each other, and she's got the boiled egg, and you can see the one that's trying to care for the other by giving her the boiled egg. And then you get the businessman who says about the homeless guy in the toilet. He's like, oh, if you don't go to school, you'll end up like him, to the daughter. When she's trying to find a toilet to use, and he goes, if you don't go to school, you end up like him. And she says, oh, my mum says people who say that are bad. And I was like, what a way to set up his character, because his character actually ends up the ultimate arsehole in it, the other businessman who's like constantly trying to like force people out the trains, or he's that scared that he's just looking out for himself. But I love that foreshadowing for his character, in that the wee girl says, "My mum who says people who say that are bad." I was like,
yes. And we're going to call that character the wanker.
The wanker. He is a fucking wanker the whole way through this.
I have never wanted somebody to die so much in a film.
Yeah.
By the end of this film,
no redeeming qualities.
No.
None.
I fucking hate him. So
there's even actually, well, I say there's no redeeming qualities, but there's that moment. I mean, obviously we'll talk about it later as well, but that moment as he's turning and he's calling out to his mum, I was a bit like, oh, you're just like a frightened little man, aren't you? But yeah, he's no redeeming qualities, and he's the wanker, like. But yeah, that whole kind of his character setup, and then we have the setup of the husband and wife, and the wife's pregnant. And his whole thing, and again, he's kind of brings a bit of humor, but also kind of badassery to the film. And I love their whole thing as well. I love their moments.
That character, there is tropes in this film.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That character, he's the kind of the slightly bigger, butcher, kind of bulkier guy, maybe that you see later on. He can
He just punches zombies, and everyone else needs weapons. He can just straight up punch them in the head.
Yeah, you've got the pregnant wife. There's always a pregnant wife in these types of films. And then you normally have a single parent. And in this one, it's the man. Sometimes you get a single female parent.
Yeah.
And obviously, normally with the parent in this kind of story, they are trying to learn a lesson of some sort. And you get that at the start. We mentioned it there, how he doesn't really have time for his daughter. And he kind of, he's always bogged down with work.
Yeah, he hasn't really got time for anyone but himself. And I think that's the big thing that we learn as the film develops, that's why his wife left him. That's why his daughter doesn't really want to stay with him. And how people view him, because even it's a bit sort of after this, and he closes the door, or as the zombie outbreak's happening, and he closes the door on the husband and the pregnant wife, and they end up letting him in anyway. And he's like, "Why'd you close the door on me?" And he calls him an arsehole, and basically calls him an arsehole the rest of the way through the film. But then, and a jerk. And then he said, I think he says, the bigger guy says to the daughter, like, is any wonder a lot of people don't like your dad? Or no, he says something like, "Oh, you're something like your dad's a real jerk." And the wife says, "Don't be saying that in front of her." And she's like, "Oh no, a lot of people say that." So she knows the perception of her father that other people have.
He says something like he's a leech, or he leeches off people, or something like that.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Which I suppose he does in his job, but obviously he goes on a journey through this, and by the end of the story, he has redeemed himself as well.
Yeah.
So there's a zombie apocalypse. Obviously, we talked about that. Happens on the train. It's mostly set on the train.
Yeah.
From Seoul to Busan, they eventually end up in Busan, but it stops along the way at different stations, and shit happens. And it's an amazing action movie, I would say. I'd say it's probably actually more of an action movie than a horror movie, really.
Yeah, it doesn't really hold back its punches when it comes to showing some of the violence. The thing is, it's not like an overly gory film. There's not like zombies like ripping people's guts out or like biting into the throats. I'd say a lot of the zombie violence is quite tame, because I don't know if I'm not sure what Gav, you got them budget numbers. You got some numbers for us.
I'll do your numbers, yeah, Danny. Let me just take a wee sip before I drop the knowledge.
Wet that whistle before you give us them deets.
So the budget was 8.5 million, which is pretty good.
Yeah. That was just for the train.
Middly.
Yeah, that was the budget just went on trains.
I know, that's how much it cost for the train to rent the train.
Just the train alone.
It made 98.5 million in the box office. Now that was worldwide, so that's obviously in Korea, and then through Asia, and then when it came to the US and Europe and stuff, it made nearly 100 million. So massive success.
Yeah.
And it's, as I said, it's a movie that I hadn't seen till we were watching it for this episode, and I had obviously heard the buzz around when it was first released, and I kept saying, "Oh, I must watch it, I must watch it, I must watch it." And for some reason, I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
And then I was holding off to do an episode of this. So, but it's a fantastic movie. You were saying about that it's not very gory. You're right. It's not gory. Yes, there's zombies in it. We'll get into the zombies. I think they are quite unique to this movie.
Yeah.
They're fast zombies.
They're speedy boys. They go
are.
zip zap zoo. I love that, but I love how yes, they're fast, but they're very ragdolly. Like I love the way like when they kind of fall over and stuff, they kind of roll, and there's something almost kind of ragdoll but acrobatic. You know, they're all quite disjointed.
I thought they were very sort of animalistic. Like whenever like a dog or a cat or so, maybe not a cat so much, but like a dog or something falls on their back, they do that sort of spinny thing, you know.
Yeah.
They sort of roll over to get up, and then obviously a lot of these characters who are playing the zombies, yes, they were probably gymnasts, because you can tell they're kind of double jointed in certain scenes, and they're able to move their limbs quite freely. And I thought that was very unique to this film. I'm not normally a fan of fast zombies, but the zombies in this were very scary.
They do it really well, because I don't think it would have worked if they'd been shufflers in the train, because especially those scenes, you know, when they're going through the tunnels.
Yeah.
And so basically the characters eventually find out that when the train goes through tunnels and it's dark, that the zombies kind of get confused and disorientated, and they've got the zombies kind of have their eyes almost look like cataracts, like they've got cataracts, very milky.
Cataratic, is that
a word?
I don't think so.
Let us know in the comments below, is cataratic a word, or is it just has cataracts? Well, they've got cataracts, and very severe cataracts, so they should go and see an optician. But they figure out basically that when they go through the tunnels, because their sight's that bad, that the zombies can't see them, but they can still hear them. Their sense of hearing is heightened. So they kind of realize, right, if we distract them with sound, they'll go away and we can scuttle up the train away from them. But then when they come back out the tunnel, then the zombies can see them and scurry after them. But if they'd been shufflers, like, we just wouldn't have had the same kind of the same sort of tension.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do with the shufflers.
Yeah.
And I'm not a massive fan of zombies in general as a subgenre. I've mentioned it in our Dawn of the Dead episode, the Zack Snyder remake, which I'll put a link up there as well, so go back and watch that. I'm not really a massive fan of zombies. I think it's been done to death, and I think whenever The Walking Dead came on TV, it just
saturated.
It really just diluted the whole genre, and I know loads of people out there still love zombies, and when they're done well, they're done really well, and I did enjoy this, and I think that the zombies in this were unique enough that it kept me kind of interested in it, because the thing that I really loved about the zombies in this was they were still quite human, even when they turned. They didn't have loads of makeup. There was a bit of blood on. Obviously, they had the
veins. The main thing.
Yeah, the white eyes, and then the sort of veins going up their face a little bit. And you know, other than that, they were kind of still very human. And it was more about their movements. And I just thought it was very unique to this film.
Yeah, I think the zombie design for this, as you say, just real basic, but works really well. And I know there's a sequel to this, which is currently on Prime, which I do intend to watch. But it'd be interesting to kind of hear a bit more about what the origin of this biohazard is that, you know, has caused the outbreak. Because we know we kind of get a bit of a glimpse later on in the film when the main character's like right hand calls him and says, you know, the leak has come from this lab that's associated with our contracts. Did we cause this? Did I cause this? And that's the only kind of moment where we kind of get any sort of backstory to the origin of the outbreak. So I don't know whether the second film builds on that. And if you do know, let us know in the comments below. I do intend to go watch it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of know. But I almost like that as well, that, you know, we are, you know, as you say, we've been so overexposed to zombies that we kind of know the crack, we know where they come from, or at least know 5 different ways in which zombies come about. They either come about by like an occult ritual, a biohazard, or they've been brought back by like meteorite dust. Is there not a movie where they're brought back by like a passing meteorite turns people into zombies. There's something.
Oh, Night of the Comet. Yeah, Night of the Comet.
Yeah, no, so we know how origin. It's like saying to somebody, "Well, how does Spider-Man become Spider-Man?" We all kind of know.
Yeah, you don't need to know. You
No.
don't need to know the exact story.
You don't need too much exposition, and I think that's what this film does really well. Is it gives us just nice wee snippets of exposition for the main story and for characters' backstories and stuff. That it's like, yeah, no, this side.
I think it works well because yes, obviously it's a zombie movie, but the main story is about the characters on the train and who are they and how do they survive this.
Yeah,
I felt quite uncomfortable watching the movie, not because of any of the scenes or anything like that, just because of how relevant it was in today's society, because obviously of the pandemic and also because of what came out of the pandemic. We'll talk a little bit in detail maybe about specific scenes, but there's this one character that we talked about called the Wanker.
Wanker.
We will formally call him that. He doesn't want to help anybody. He's very selfish. He's all to the point where he actually ends up killing at least two characters in this.
Yep.
Where he feeds them to the zombies, so he pushes them out of the way into the zombies so he can escape. And it's not just the idea of he's a survivor and he wants to survive. It's kill or be killed or whatever. It's earlier on, just before that scene at the end where he does push that guy out, he essentially tells a lie in a group of people, and they sort of believe him. They're like, "She
causes mass hysteria." Yeah, he causes an event of mass hysteria because he believes that because of the main character's outburst, he's like, "Oh, well, that's unbridled rage," and he's obviously infected because of look how angry he is, and everyone else is like, "Oh yeah, he's really angry, so he must be infected." And all common sense goes out the window.
It was that thing where he sort of goes, "He's infected. Look at his eyes," and the guy's looking, and they're all looking at him, and they know he's not infected, but because he keeps saying it, they're like, "Yeah," and then he says, "Get out, leave the train or leave the car and go to the next car." And they're like, "Yes, get out." So they kind of turn against the rescued group or the survivors from the other car, and they're forced to go to another car, and that made me feel so uncomfortable because
when they're all shouting at that, honestly, like that crowd mentality, and the fact that it's not like they kind of tell them to get out and then that's the scene over. It really sort of lingers, and there's people like you can see how wound up all those people are getting because they're scared, but you can tell that Wanker's feeding into it.
It's the whole sort of scare tactics and fear mongering and this idea that whenever you're scared you would do anything to survive, to the point where you would believe blatant lies. And it reminded me very much of how society has been over the past couple of years, not just because of the year and a half of the pandemic, but with Brexit and with Donald Trump and with racism and misinformation and fake news and everything that's happened over the past really sort of 5 to 6 years into today's society all over the world. It was very uncomfortable to watch, and it's just like, fuck.
Too many wankers.
That was so, it struck a chord with me, and it was very close to the bone, and too many wankers out there spreading misinformation. So that was actually the real horror of the story, was the fact that it's about selfishness versus collectiveness. It's about working as a team or not working as a team, and basically everyone dies in the end, apart from a couple of characters. But the ones that aren't selfish last longer.
Exactly, that's it. The unselfish ones, the ones that want to help out, the pure souls, the innocents, are the ones that sort of make it through. And as you say, the misinformation, I think, plays a real big part, because as you say, yes, there's the wanker man who gets the crowd going, but even before that, the main character, so before they arrive, before they end up going out to Busan, they stop at another train station beforehand, which is the stop after Seoul, and they're told, right, we need to get off here, and we get off here, we'll be escorted by the army. And the main character calls ahead to like his people and says, look, what's going on? What do we do? And they're like, oh, they're quarantining at that station. As soon as you get off, you'll be quarantined. And he's like, right, well, what can you do for me and my daughter? We need to get to Busan. So they tell him, go to the west, go to the west courtyard, don't go to the main courtyard. My people will see you there. Well, I'll radio ahead and let them know. But of course, in his selfishness, he's misinformed, or it's too late by the time they get there, and it turns out that station's actually been overrun. Because it's that moment where they're all going through and the train station's dead. There's not a soul to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And they walk out and they start going down the stairs to get out the station, and there's all the soldiers, and then the soldiers turn around and they're fucking zombies as well, and everybody panics, starts trying to run. The zombies sprint up after them, and see all that clambering up the escalator and stuff and up the stairs. Like, there's quite a lot of this scene where, because of how many zombies there are, they're all clambering over each other, and it gets quite claustrophobic. And especially when they're in the train and they're in those individual carriages and the whole middle bit's blocked up. It's like, when you're on the, if you're from jolly old Northern Ireland like ourselves, and it's the height of the summer and everyone's down to Portrush on the train and it's fucking packed and you can't get a seat.
The port.
It's like that. It's like when you're standing squished amongst all the other people, it's like a wee tin of sardines. There's just something really claustrophobic about it. And this film really like builds on that, just the idea of like piling on. You see all the zombies, like just the way they come over a wave over the survivors at times. And you're just like, oh, it's it's an interesting one. There's all those zombies movies where you see, what is it, World War Z, where all the zombies are clambering up each other to get up the wall. Like, that's kind of all well and good and looks cool in a wide shot, but it's when you get in really tight to it, they actually start to feel a bit kind of like, oh, just
feels more real.
It's
like the zombies are sort of fighting for space amongst themselves.
And as you say, it's just the animalistic thing of, I need to get ahead, I need to get the food, and it's not even, they don't really ever seem to like eat people. It's just like a desire to infect, like bite, and then they kind of move on.
I feel like it's more just about trying to spread rather than, it's not sustenance. It's not like, it's not food.
Brains.
It's not brains. It's just, it feels like they're trying to just spread the virus, I suppose.
Coronavirus. COVID-19.
The protagonist of this film, I think, is not the main guy. I think it's the little girl.
Yeah.
Suyan, I want her to say her name is that right? Suyan, I think, is her name. I could be wrong, and I apologize. She's the protagonist, I think, because she is us. She's humanity. She's humanity trying to see what's the best way to survive this situation. And
she just wants to do good the whole time.
Yeah, trying to help everyone. And you get that really early on when she says to her father about, you only care about yourself. And that strikes a chord with him. You can see in his eyes, and he almost tears up. And then from that moment, he kind of, wises up a wee bit. And then she sort of says it to different characters throughout the story. And she says it to the old sisters when she gives them a bag of sweets or something. She
gives the older sister her seat, and the old lady gives her the sweets. Remember, they're going through, and then he's like, you take a seat, and she gives her seat up to the older. And the dad actually says to her, you've got to look out for yourself. And that's when she's just like, no, you can see the disappointment from her then, because she's like, that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah. So up until this point, we got hints of the zombie outbreak. I loved how it was just sort of teased with news reports, and they heard the staff talking on the phone, and somebody's having an epileptic fit or something like that. And then once shit kicks off and the zombies start biting, the first one you see is that girl when she rises up behind the staff on the train, and then you see the next scene is her running down with her on her back, through the car with all the baseball players on it. And then I just like how it's a kind of a slow build, but once it starts, it's just non-stop really from there. And I love that this whole film is kind of, it is about zombies, but it's kind of like a slasher in that sense, where it's just a chase. The whole thing's basically a chase. Chased up the train, yeah. You know what I mean? You're on the train. They're going from car to car because it starts at the back or the front, whatever, and it moves up each car basically. Yeah. And the train is chasing itself. It's trying to get to its destination. But I think it's Daejeon Station is whenever they stop, and as you say, it's completely empty, and even that itself is eerie.
It's a bit 28 Days Later when they kind of start walking through the station.
The passengers know there's something fucking up because one of the guys like, "What's going on here? Like, there's nobody about," and it's so scary because when they're going down the escalator, the weird thing about that is now they couldn't hear anything until they get within sight of the soldiers, and then they all turn around, and just suddenly it's just a barrage of soldiers.
Yeah,
and loads of them die and obviously get turned. And then when they try to get back on, I love that whole segment whenever they're trying to get back on to the train again, because that's when they get separated, and then that's kind of like where the real story really begins, because the whole point of the story is how the group rejoin again.
Yeah.
So the father is separated from the girl, the two sisters are separated, the wife and the husband, the pregnant wife and the husband are separated, and the guy with the baseball bat is separated from his girlfriend and his group, and a lot of his group actually die on the way trying to get into the train.
Yeah.
So that's where the film really starts off, is whenever the group separates, and then we get that awesome sequence where they realize they have to rescue them because the vulnerable group have all gone into the washroom. Is that right?
Yeah, they're in like a toilet washroom sort of car.
They've all went into the washroom. They still don't really know. They obviously know it's zombies, undead, whatever the fuck you want to call it, but they still don't really know the rules. And then the other group, which is the main big guy, the baseball bat guy,
and the businessman,
businessman
dad,
busy. They sort of realize they have to make their way through the group of zombies to get to their loved ones to rescue them. So they start taping up their arms and all. And
it's when they tape up the arms and they get them ready to battle. And business dad's got his shield and baton, and baseball boy's got his baseball bat, and badass big dude is just fucking wrapped his wrists up and ready to punch boys in the head.
I know. And then they kind of have to work as a team, really. And they start moving their way slowly down each car, working as a team. But I love how the wee young guy, whenever they first go in, they're like maybe not the first car, it's like the second car, I think, where he sees all his mates, and he's like, fuck, he freezes because he's like, I need to kill my mates here, and he doesn't know what to do, and eventually he does. He has to sort of do something. But I love that kind of little sort of moments like that throughout the film, where it just pauses for a second and reminds us that these guys, these characters are human, and it's a tough situation that they're in, and they're not just superheroes.
One of the biggest moments for me with that sort of moment of reflection, where someone has to consider, well, that's my loved one, but now they're zombified, but is the sisters.
I was just No, let's not say that just yet.
No, yeah, we will get there, but fuck.
I know, man. That was the most heroic moment of the whole film for me. So these guys are fighting the zombies, and I just love, even before the train got off, the whole army of zombies when they crashed through the glass and fell on top of the train, and then they have to work as a team. They're running and they're batting their fucking shite out of these zombies, and they jump on, and the two guys have sort of become friends. Now after the they've sort of.
He still calls them Marshall, but
I know,
they're friends.
But there's like a mutual respect there, because they're both. Well, he's going to be a father, and the other guy is a father.
Yeah.
And I think he says something. I don't know if it's now or if it's later on, but he does say something about being a father and how fathers get forgotten about because they're like the silent. I can't remember.
It's because they have to. It's like you work hard to give her everything she wants, and but you can't be there to experience those moments, sort of thing. And it's just like, oh.
It was a nice moment. I can't remember the exact line of dialogue, but it was a nice moment. And eventually they get down the cars, and then they go through the tunnel, and they realize that's when they find out that the zombies
can't see in the dark.
They can't see in the dark, and they not only can they not see, but they sort of almost like freeze in the dark. It's kind of like as soon as it goes dark, it's almost like their batteries run out, and they just sort of wait.
They just kind of like look around. They're like they stood in the one place, but they're like looking around, because that's how I was kind of watching. I was like, right, can they not see in the dark, or is it the fast flickering in the light in the tunnel that they're getting distracted by? And they're just like, when like a cat sees like a laser and they're like
laser dot.
Is it like that there sort of? But yeah, they basically end up standing still, and the only thing that'll distract them is sound.
And then they use their phone to distract them so that they can go by them and stuff. And then they climb up on top of the
Or they've already reunited, so
Storage.
that they get to that bit with storage, but they've actually just before that they've reunited with the vulnerable group with the daughter and pregnant wife and the older sister, and that's when they realize, right, we can climb up onto the baggage part to get by these ones, but then we have to distract them again. We've got was that he's like, oh, we've got, or no, it's the next bit where he's like, we've got 2 minutes to climb the tunnel to get up through here. You know, we've got 2 minutes in the tunnel before we're back to light again. Just so I loved how sort of tense those moments were.
I think that's what the whole film is, just one big long tense moment. It kind of goes from tense moment, and then it has a wee bit of respite, and then it goes to another tense moment, and then another bit of respite. And in between those moments, you learn about the characters a little more, kind of get to know them a wee bit better, and kind of find out who you like and who you don't like. And but the whole movie's basically non-stop.
Yeah.
And the horror is in those tense moments, really, when they're trying to get to the next car, and they're trying to get to the next car and the next one and the next one as they move up the train. But there's a moment after they have joined up with after they've rescued the group, then there's another third group later, which has got the wanker in it, and the girl, the wee girl, the baseball
baseball boy's girlfriend, not girlfriend, but girlfriend. Yeah.
And a lot of the staff and other characters that you don't really meet that much.
No, not really important to the story, but they're just in the train. Yeah,
they're up in the far car, and she's like, "Oh, brilliant! They're coming to rescue us and stuff." And then the wanker's like, "Nah, they're infected." You know, he's oh fuck me, boy! I'm starting to lose my rag with this boy.
Yeah,
and he doesn't want to let them in.
And he's like proper trying to hold the door open, and baseball boy's got his arm fucking stuck on the door, and
for some reason I don't know why people are listening to him. Like, he's an older man, like just knock him out and be like, "Wise the fuck up, you prick."
Yeah.
So they get to the door, and he's kind of stopping it, and they're like, "Fucking let me in." And then this moment, man, this was the real killer for me, because you had at one side of the car you had the door that was closed, and they weren't letting them in, and then at the other side was the zombies, and they were trying to hold this door closed just enough so they could get into the next car. And the main protagonist, the businessman, is holding it with the other guy who called him an arsehole, and it's just never end. They can't release this door, they can't get it locked, and the hands are all coming through, and it's pretty scary. And then it gets to the point where the guy's just like, he gets bitten, doesn't he? He gets bitten on the hand.
I was going to say, this actually, the moment where he gets bitten in the hand reminded me so much of Evil Dead, because the zombie, the business dad, has smacked that zombie in the back of the head, and she goes down. But then she does this real quick, like spins the head, like almost does like an exorcist spin around, and then goes like, rah! And like flies up and bites his hand. I was like, that's some fucking deadite shit right there.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I was kind of like, that's a Sam Raimi fucking moment right there. And I don't know if it is in any way a sort of wee nod, a wee tip of the hat. But yeah, I was like, ah. But yeah, he ends up getting the inside of his hand bit when he's holding the door. And the big guy, and it's just like, in that moment you're like,
it's kind of a thing where you just know, and they know themselves. It's like, fuck, I've been bitten, this is it, it's over. But in a very heroic moment, instead of him just sort of being like, fuck it, I'm gonna die, he basically sacrifices himself and tells the other guy to take his wife away and save them while he holds the door.
That's right, because she's just standing like the aisle of the carriage, like crying, because again, as she says, she just knows that there's no going back for him now.
No. So yeah, and then I mean, that whole scene's beautifully filmed, very well acted, very emotional, sort of build up with the music and everything. It's a great scene. They eventually get through up to the other side of the door, and the guy holds him off for as long as he possibly can.
And his eyes are starting to turn, and you can just see the change in his facial expression. It's just,
there's even when his eyes do turn, he's still fighting it.
Still fighting, yeah.
You get that sort of brief moment afterwards where he's like, he's sort of got more determined than ever now after his eyes turn, but he obviously can't hold him off any longer. And then they just completely overthrow him and
just clamber over him, over the top.
Start running towards the other side of the car, and then they get through the door eventually. They get through, and Wanker Boy gets smacked in the head a couple of times. And then that's whenever he starts claiming that these new folk that have come into the car are infected, and you get that mass hysteria moment that we talked about earlier that was so enraging.
Yeah. It's even before, just as they're trying to get through the door to the third group, it's that moment where the two sisters meet eye to eye, and the older sister ends up getting turned. She ends up getting caught because she kind of basically ends up slowing down because she's trying to help the daughter get forward.
She's like in between the cars, isn't she? And then the wee girl's there, and she kind of slows down to help her in first, and in doing that, she gets caught before she can get in, so she gets spitting and turned.
Yep.
And then you get that real sweet moment where the younger sister and the older sister are looking at each other, and like they're not really in it that much, but that was emotional, that moment.
That was really emotional because I think the thing is like all the turmoil that's going on behind her with the main party, our main protagonist party, have been forced to the very, very front of the train, and all the third group, the arsehole group, are like trying to tie the doors closed, and the younger sister, the younger of the older sisters, goes over and is like looking in at the zombie door, and she can see her sister, who's now a zombie, like just sort of standing glossy-eyed. And she just is kind of like, thank you for everything. But then it goes to open the door, and fucking Wanker is like, stop her, and everyone's like, whoop, and then the fucking zombies all pile in on them, and I love that moment because they all run at them just as they're going into a tunnel, and you almost get that fucking flash, like nightclub with the flashing every time their light flash, you see someone else getting bit, and then flashing more attacking, and then you get the frosted glass silhouettes against the other group just looking, being like, wait, God was coming to them. All wankers.
Karma's a bitch. What goes around comes around. However, Wanker does not die.
Wanker does not. Him and one of the wee train conductor boys ends up hiding out in the toilet together.
Slip in a wee washroom together. Which, I thought obviously I hadn't seen this before, so when that happened I was like, screw that cunt, and then I found out he wasn't dead, so I was like,
no, wankers like that don't go down easy.
But in that moment, the younger sister, clearly has nothing else left to live for, because she was very close to her older sister, who is now dead, and she sees how evil this guy was and how evil this group was.
Community was, yeah.
And she knows like humanity is fucked. None of these people have got any empathy at all. So they deserve to die. And she's like, fuck this. Open the door. Let them all in. So that was a real sort of, even though she killed people, and some of those people were probably innocent, but still it was kind of a nice heroic moment for her.
Yeah, I found it really nice just in the way she kind of interacted. It was her own kind of way of saying goodbye to her sister, but also taking her own life. She's kind of like, oh, well, I can't sort of be without you, really, kind of. But yeah, one moment, and then they end up pulling up to, it's like an interchange on the rail before Busan. And they realize the train driver is like, oh, like we can't go any further here. We need to jump track. We need to get onto one of the other trains. And man, what another fucking moment. So the train driver manages to get over to get a new train. And he's like, right, I'm going slow here. You just need to get over to this train. And they kind of have to go walk around another train to get to that train. But that train's full of fucking zombies. And like, see watching them all try to get on, and then just as you think, right, they've got out of that train, they're going to get through this one, they'll get there fine. A fucking train on fire hurtles through
I know.
all the other fucking trains and starts tipping shit over and sending zombies flying, running everywhere. And
there's a huge explosion that bangs into another train, doesn't it?
yeah, it knocks the whole like
up, yeah.
zombie train sideways. And this is the moment where you said about Wanker. We find out Wanker's still alive because he comes out the toilet, but he says to like the wee train conductor dude, right, you go out, we'll go out together. But then he fucking pushes him out into the zombies as a distraction and gets off runs across to the other train.
Yeah. He jumps on the other train, but in doing that as well, he
kills the driver. Because what is it? The driver, he trips over a track and the driver's like, oh, I've got to go help him because he's a decent human being. And then in helping him, the zombies catch up on them. But instead of Wanker getting caught by the zombies, the fucking train driver gets caught by the zombies, who again is shouting, help me. But Wanker's like, nah, see you later.
He just leaves.
Jumps on the train, yeah.
But then he pushes the girl as well. The wee girl with the baseball bat boy.
That's right. She gets pushed. Yes.
He jumps into the train and pushes.
He jumps into the second train. He's on the second train, which is also now starting to fill with zombies. And the boy gets bit. Just baseball bat boy gets bit, and then he ends up pushing her as well, and she ends up getting attacked so that he can run on.
He doesn't get bit yet. He pushes the girl into a zombie. She gets bitten, and then the baseball bat boy's like crying.
Oh, and then she fucking bites into his neck.
She just bites him like as soon as she starts.
Right.
I love the way they transform as well. It's just like
they just can't. And then
the only one thing I will say, and it's the same for all these fucking movies, any sort of vampire transformation, werewolf, zombies, it's very inconsistent. The transformations. So some people,
if it's a main character, it has to play out a bit longer. Yeah, always. No, to be fair though, we'll get there. But protagonist Daz transformation is quite sweet.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's quite a nice moment, but again, it's not as instantaneous as all the other zombie transformations, and even Big Burly Man, his one's a bit slower. But again, his is you're kind of like, right, he's fighting it, whereas everyone else just kind of gives into it. But the Daz one, you're just like, take your time there, mate.
I know. So pretty much everyone's dead apart from main businessman guy, Wanker, little girl Suyan, and pregnant woman. The four that are alive. So they go to the train, and it's now going to Busan.
Yeah.
It's now
small train. The train to Busan.
This is the actual train to Busan.
This is the
titular car.
The little train that could.
I know. So they've managed to escape the crash, the train, because there was a moment there where
it's that moment
the homeless man dies. He sacrifices himself because remember the train fell.
Yes.
We sort of skipped over that bit.
I was going to say it's when the train, we said about the fiery train that like hurtles through all the other trains, but because they're sort of like sandwiched between two trains, that other train like falls on a diagonal tilt, and all the zombies like pressing up against the train window, like trying to get at them. I was like, oh, again, like I said, a lot of real tight claustrophobic moments in this, and that's one of them as well. Just that moment where the train sort of falls towards them. Oh,
one of the best scenes is still to come. There's been some cool scenes, but whenever they run to the train that's already moving, and they sort of have to run, and they're sort of reaching out and they grab it, they just about grab the train in time, they jump on, they think they're okay, and the zombies are chasing them behind, and then one of the zombies just catches on, and then another zombie catches on to him, and it sort of forms this chain of zombies from the back of the train. I thought it was fucking awesome. And they were just being dragged, but they were sort of climbing on top of each other.
It's almost like ants when you see ants building like a wee ladder. Yeah.
I thought it was a really, really cool scene. And then obviously they eventually sort of are able to kick them away, and they're away. They're safe. Well, they think they're safe. Because guess who's fucking up the front of the train?
Guess who it turns out got fucking bit?
Fucking zombie Wanker.
Fucking zombie Wanker, who's like, might as well get home to my mum.
I have to admit now,
get home to my mum.
I know, as much as I hated him when he came out and he was like, "Oh, I want to go home to my mother." He doesn't even know he's been bitten, and the guy's like, "You're infected," and he's like, "What?" And he looks at his hands and all. Yeah, like that was such a clever.
And then that's the moment he turns.
I mean, it was really clever to sort of do that. And then when he realizes, he's been infected, he goes for your man, and you have a wee skirmish, a wee fight. And
I love that moment because there's a couple of times where you're kind of just like, fuck him off that rail, would you? But then you're like, oh, he might fall, and then he chains himself up and fucks him off, and you're like, clever boy.
But I will say it is frustrating because he doesn't really just not to cunt. You know what I mean? Punch him, kick him in the balls.
Do zombies? What zombies feel? If you kick the zombie in the nuts, would it be the same?
I would imagine so. It's still pain, isn't it?
Zombie nut kick. No. But again, zombies don't really feel pain. But it's not pain's entirely different pain. It's something else that's from deep down inside.
Worse than giving birth.
You know the kind of character that would say that?
Zombie wanker.
Zombie wanker.
So anyway, I can only guess that he doesn't want to punch him in case he bites him or something.
Why did you go to punch the zombie and just goes talking about fucking actually want to just side note, one of the fucking worst scene of film where that happens, where the person goes to punch the boy and gets his fist caught in his mouth, and then he goes to pull his fist out of the dude's mouth and all the skin peels away from his hand. Korean film Ichi the Killer. You ever seen that? Yeah, when he punched the boy in the mouth and he fucking catches his fist.
All the fucking the hooks and all.
He's got all the piercings. Yeah, the Chelsea smile. Fucking great movie. We might have to, if you want to see us cover Ichi the Killer, let us know in the comments below. Because I haven't
seen it in years, man.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but I mean that opening scene fucking stuck in my head. Jesus.
Extreme, tartan, extreme.
Yeah.
Takeshi Miike directed that, I think. Amazing film.
Great movie. But just while we were talking about, going to punch somebody in the mouth and getting caught by their teeth, that's just popped in my head just as you said. I was like, fucking Ichi the Killer. But yeah. So anyway, he knocks Wanker Zombie off the train.
Protagonist businessman gets bitten, so he's holding his mouth to stop him from trying to bite the woman, and he gets bitten and he knows he's been bitten, but he ties the chain around him and he fucking leashes him off. He saves himself, climbs up, realizes he's going to die.
Fuck.
I know. I have to say, this was a real tearjerker of an ending to a film. Yeah. You've been through this whole sort of horror, zombies, all this bullshit, and it is a very, very emotional ending because
so poignant.
The little girl is unreal at this point. She's like really going for it acting wise.
She's a fantastic actor the whole way through it. Like just her way, like it's just real natural. The scene, the way she delivers her lines, the way she interacts with the other characters and stuff. But this moment, like I mean, that wee girl is crying sore. Like you can tell, like she's going through it. And it's that moment when he pushes them both into like the front cabin of the train and he sits her down and he's just like, you've got to stay here, stay with her, she'll keep you safe, you get to Busan, go find your mother, just stay, don't follow me. And he closes them in the cabin and the pregnant woman's like holding on to her and she's like crying while holding on to this wee girl who is absolutely just bawling her eyes out, and she's like, it's so fucking harrowing to watch this wee girl lose her father. And then as he's like, that's all you hear as he like walks up to the back of the train, and then he's standing on the edge, and you get that kind of white fade, and then you get the flashbacks of like her as a baby and stuff, and he just sort of the eyes start to turn milky, and he smiles, and then you get the silhouette of him. You get the shadow of him falling off the back of the train.
He's sort of transforming into a zombie, obviously, but in that moment, he's kind of standing there, taking it all in and realizing this is the end of his life as a human being, and he's remembering the best moment of his life was holding his newborn child. You get that wee flashback, and it's a lovely ending, and
fantastic bit of music as well to that.
Yeah, beautiful.
That wee flashback, lovely bit of music, but that whole like lead up to his wee flashback and her just crying really sore.
And the scene,
like,
the scene where you see his shadow, that's. I mean, he could even easily have saw him just jump off, but I love that you don't actually see it. You just see the shadow
against the gravel,
slowly just falling down, and it's a beautiful, beautiful ending to a great, great movie.
It's there's quite a few emotional moments. There's one actually quite early on in the film when everything's starting to kind of really kick off, and you can see everyone around the trains like calling their loved ones, and he calls his mum, and as he's talking to his mum, her voice starts to turn, and you can just you can tell that he's just putting two and two together and realizing that she's turning, and his eyes get a bit kind of watery, glassy then, and you're a bit like, oh. Like that there. I fought for that as well. Like, it's very obvious that, yes, while he's kind of an arsehole, very focused on his career, like, he still obviously loves his ma.
He's not a horrible person.
He's not a horrible person. No, he still has people.
There's nothing to suggest that he's a horrible human being, other than the fact that
he's just career driven.
The thing is, he's still married to his wife. They're just split up. They're estranged.
Because that's what the mum said. Married. His mum sort of says to him, like, you can make this work. You know, it shouldn't end over something so trivial. Pretty much is what she sort of says to him.
It's implied that they split up because he's a workaholic, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. And I just thought that, again, another just talking about poignant moments, but I mean, the end of it, that ending, his end, is just, as I said, I think the thing that really set me off sort of with it was just how sore that, you know, it just really felt genuine, her grief, you know, in that moment. And then we kind of get the cutaway after we see the shadow of him falling off the back of the train, and it's the two of them in the front cabin, and the wee girl is still sort of crying away, and they come to like a barricade, a blockade on the track, so they have to stop the train and
make their way through the tunnel.
Make their way through the tunnel, and all the burnt bodies up on the barricades, and then there's two soldiers on the other side of the tunnel. And they say there's two bogies approaching. What do we advise? And then they're like, "Oh, can you see any sign of infection? Like, cannot verify from this distance." And they're just like, "Take them out." And then you hear the wee girl singing the Aloha Oi as she comes up, and I was just like, "Oh." And then it's like, "They're alive!" And all the soldiers run down to greet them. Then they're singing.
Because there was another emotional moment earlier on.
Quite early, yeah.
That he missed her recital.
And it's after he's just got back from work, and the mum says, "Oh, you know, she couldn't sing," and he was watching the recording back on the camcorder, and she goes to start singing the song, and she can't do it. And then she says to him later on, it's the bit where he promises not to leave her, after they're reunited again, and she explains, like, I couldn't sing because you weren't there. That's what she says to him. She
couldn't see him there. So she couldn't physically sing. But then when she's walking through the tunnel, she starts singing. It's a nice kind of moment, because I suppose it's kind of it's a way to say that, you know, even though he's dead, he'll always be with her from that moment onwards. And yeah, man, deep stuff there.
Yeah, fantastic.
Fucking great movie. Really, really loved it. And yeah, fantastic movie. I know there's a lot of fans out there for Train to Busan.
Let us know what you think about in the comments.
However, I know there's been a bit of hate about the fact that there is just announced there's going to be a US remake of Train to Busan, which a lot of people don't want, because they think this is a perfect movie and doesn't need to be made for an American or English-speaking audience.
Leave well enough alone, you know. They fucked Old Boy already.
I was going to say, they not learn.
They fucked Old Boy. And now they're going to try and fuck this.
I think, to be honest, I think this is ripe for a remake. It could easily translate.
It could easily translate, yeah. It doesn't have the same, like, I feel like Old Boy's plot did not work well.
It was
in an American.
Old Boy's plot was a little bit more convoluted. You know, there's a wee bit more going on. This one's essentially just an action flick about zombies on a train. So they could easily do it. They'll probably call it Train to Boston, and I'll probably star Mark Wahlberg. But
I'm on a fucking train and there's all these fucking zombies. I'm gonna get a boy gun and fight a zombie bastards.
Inspired to be better. No, I think actually James Wan is producing it, and I can't remember the name of the director. It has been announced, and apparently he's a great director, so he's probably going to do a great job. But I can't remember. But I'm certain, almost certain that James Wan's producing.
One of those things, though, like, is it, the thing that would annoy me though, if it's just going to be like a straightforward English remake, like, just why bother? Like, what can they bring to it that's going to make it money? But again, it didn't even need money.
Money.
Like, it did have a good budget, but I mean, did it need money? And yes, I'll probably get them money, but leave well enough alone.
We'll see.
I mean, I quite enjoy like train movies. Fucking Snowpiercer. Fucking love Snowpiercer. The movie and the TV series.
Yeah.
There's that one I keep meaning to watch with Vinnie Jones, Meat Train.
Midnight Meat Train. Yeah, it's basically
Midnight Meat Train.
That's Clive Barker's short story.
Oh, is it? See, I keep thinking, I keep meaning to watch that because is it not sort of a murdery train movie?
Yeah, it's set on a train and it's about a killer on a train, basically. The remake, not excited about it at all. A lot of hate for it. I'm sure it'll be very successful.
If anybody is excited about it, I mean, let us know if you want to. If you want.
If you don't.
We're not.
Anyway.
We fucking love the OG version.
We do.
Proper Korean version.
So this is my first time watching it, but I knew that I would love it, and I did love it. I'm really happy we got to cover it on Monday Night Frights. So hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, check out the website, www.thefrightclubni.com. Follow us on social media.
Yes.
At the Fright Club NI. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, subscribe, all that good shit. Tell all your friends about us. And until next week, that's all we've got time for. All the best. Stay safe. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Toot toot.